Welcome back to Lens Language. Today I want to break down the Invincible versus Conquest fight, and I also want to use my cinematic or film brain in order to break down the shots, lighting, because when I first watched this, I was noticing certain things is they did to make Conquest feel like this overarching villain. And again, I just wanted to kind of mix in animation and try to break in like a new animation type of series. Uh, because film typically would apply to like movies, camera with like a real camera and things of that nature. But figured it'd be interesting to do animation, and Invincible is a series that I really do enjoy, and this is also a very popular fight. One of the best animated fights in the series. So yeah, I wanted to break that down. All right. Um. All right, and I might slow some of this down because it's already moving pretty fast. But so yeah, we have this high angle, and Mark flies really fast close to the camera, and then flies past the camera. But it's a high angle because Conquest is starts off higher. The fight starts off with a clash between Mark and Conquest. Conquest is flying in from the skies from another planet. Mark is flying up from the Earth, and they clash in the middle. So it's natural that Mark would be given a high angle as he flies higher to the camera because he's lower. And when we go to Conquest, we have the complementary shot of Conquest flying in from higher, so he's given a low angle. And when they clash in the middle, there is this abrupt dolly out very fast, just signifying the magnitude and power of the punch given. There were also some impact frames as well, and then a whole bunch of debris and explosion of light, which is energy, but it would still be considered a noticeable point when talking about lighting. 3 or 4 wide shots. I don't know if there was much movement there. Very subtle movement, but all of them were wide shots of just kind of debris, people flying around, debris and stuff, and very subtle movements. Though I noticed the camera movement had very minimal pans or very minimal tilts, and kind of just let the damage speak for itself. Um, Very interesting shift, very subtle. That would be considered a rack focus, as it rack focuses from the debris from like the background buildings and stuff, and the focus is now put on the glass. Yep. Low angle, or no, first it was an extreme close up with the hands. Then we had a low angle, very wide shot as we trucked through the scene, kind of establishing it. That first shot, the ECU would be considered a cut in because it's introducing us back to uh, this portion of the scene, or this location specifically, as we went very wide and we're showing different places where they weren't at, more so just what was being affected. And now we have a close up of Mark struggling. A lot of yeah, not too much close ups, mid shots, um, basic setting the scene to show that Mark was struggling a bit. Conquest wasn't struggling so much. Conquest, when we showed his face, he had no movement with the camera. Mark had a slight pan, or slight movement with his camera. I'm guessing this signified that he's struggling a bit more, as Conquest is a bit more calm and composed as we're stuck on the frame. Here we've got camera shake.
And this would be telling you how the Viltrum Empire would turn this wretched planet into a utopia.
And now we have a very powerful shot for Conquest, as Conquest has just reigned over Mark for the first time officially in this fight. We saw Mark before was struggling, but now Conquest has officially overpowered him in this first clash. We get some shots of Mark, with his hand, Conquest close-ups of Conquest hands, close-ups of Mark, him kind of holding Mark down. But as he gets up and triumphs, we get this shot where it's a low angle. We see Mark in frame, and then we tilt up to Conquest, kind of revealing this powerful figure. We're at a low angle still, so Conquest appears bigger than he is, and we're also at a Dutch tilt. Conquest is not actually leaning towards the right. It's the camera being tilted to the left. So it appears that he's leaning towards the right. And this is to show you use a Dutch tilt in film to signify that something is wrong and something is not going right. It's this uneasy feeling, and we get all of this uneasy, powerful reveal of Conquest as he makes his arrival, and this is how we're introduced to this character.
How you would be stupid to resist. I'll tell you no such thing. The truth is, I want you to resist.
So I think that was very fascinating. We had that kind of a knee shot of Conquest when we first revealed him. Then there was a jump cut as we punched in to a medium close-up or close-up of him discussing more. Then we go to this extreme wide shot. You can barely make out Mark or Conquest within the frame. Bird's eye view, and we're just moving through the space as if we're watching from afar. This kind of pulls you away, as if to say what he's saying isn't as important, before we punch in extremely close to Conquest's face. I think this is the closest we've been to Conquest's face this battle so far, and he's saying that I want you to resist. So that is the twist. This is what they want us to hear. Because the dialogue was saying that, I guess another, or they're Viltrumites, so another Viltrumite soldier was saying that they're trying to protect. And in war, both sides are trying to say they're right, but the only real winner in war is the person who wins. Conquest is saying, where I'm not trying to be the good guy, not necessarily trying to be the bad guy, but I'm not trying to be the good guy here. I just want bloodlust. I just want war. I enjoy this portion of war. I want to fight, and I want you to resist so we can have this battle. So as he was explaining what Anissa would say and how it's all peachy keen, they pull out to this extreme wide shot because it doesn't resonate with him. It's so it doesn't matter. And then we punch into what he really wants to talk about, which is I thrive for blood and war.
I'm not here to save you.
And then we kind of punch out to this MCU shot of him because what he's saying now is still important, but the most impactful thing was when he said, I wanted you to resist. We felt it the most when he said that. We were the tightest. We pull out, we're still at an uneasy feeling. We're still locked in. We're still watching like, oh man. He's explaining why he wants you to resist. But when he really delivered that cold-hearted, I want you to resist line, and just completely flipped how we viewed Viltrumites, we felt it the most because of the shot choice that they picked.
I'm not here to spread the greatness of the Viltrum Empire. I'm here because I enjoy this. See, to me, there is no greater pleasure than feeling the warmth of my fists drenched in blood.
All right, and now we've got this shot of Mark, kind of framed in the left grid of thirds. Conquest's arm feels the frame, because it was empty at first, and we're slowly dialing to the left. Yep, before we get this shot of Mark punching Conquest. If you notice, the focus also stays on Mark's fist afterwards, and Conquest goes flying out of frame. It was a really close shot of the fist. Conquest goes flying out of frame. He's now in the top left graded thirds. Mark is in the bottom left graded thirds with his arm. This is staying very consistent with the 180 rule. You still have to stay consistent with the 180 rule and animation, because if his fist was on the right side and he punched Conquest and he went flying to the left side, it just wouldn't feel as consistent because Conquest was just on the right side with his arm. The jump cuts would be too jittery and it wouldn't look right. They abide by this rule, and we get to see Conquest just flying out of frame uh, into the background. And Mark's fist is so in the foreground, very strong, taking up a lot of space.
Okay, that's a start.
All right, it seems though with such a powerful fight, they've decided to keep the camera movements very smooth, very controlled, despite these two figures being, I won't say the most powerful figures in the verse, but Conquest and Invincible are extremely powerful. They're the strongest two people on Earth right now, without a doubt. But they're keeping it controlled because we're following Mark right now, and Mark is able to keep up with Conquest, at least for the time being. If we were following another hero, there's another hero named Rex. He's a normal human. He has explosion powers. He cannot hold a candle to Conquest. If we were to follow Rex fighting Conquest, the camera movements would be a lot jittery. We wouldn't be able to follow the movements of Conquest. It would be a lot more chaotic. Invincible and Conquest are fighting each other similar to a boxing match. When two heavyweight boxers are fighting each other, it's a very strategic game. It's not just wailing and chaotic, or it's not just dominant and one sided of one dude beating down this other guy. It's very strategic. It's very set up your punches. It's very bob and weave type of. It's more controlled esque. As you'll see later, Invincible starts getting dominated by Conquest, and they mimic that within the camera movements. But for the time being, Conquest is going pretty light and kind of warming up, and these two powerhouses are just flexing their powers and going at it. But that is why when he got dragged through the building, it was a slow pan, but Mark and Conquest were moving very quick and causing so much destruction. And that slow pan really just puts into perspective how, come on, Mark, you can do it. You're still keeping up with him because we're keeping up with the fight through the movements. But we can see how powerful Mark is, and we can see how much debris, and we can see the other humans dying because they're just in the vicinity. And this is very beautifully articulated visually by the camera movements and the animation. Even when he was flying through the building, yep, that's the pan. It's locked on to Mark. So if you were to shoot this in person, you'd get a camera rig. I think it's called a snorri cam, where it's rigged up to the body and the body rig extends outward, and then the camera would be plopped on a plate, and no matter where the person moves, they will be locked in, but their background is shifting. And Conquest is, he's moving a little bit. He's kind of stuck too because he's being held, but despite all this movement and push through the rubble and all the foreground elements, Mark's face is being locked on. We're seeing the grit and determination. All right, and he is center framed in this shot. Before, we just kind of had some wide shots. They started incorporating a bit more camera shake. They wanted to really put emphasis on that building falling specifically. Uh, yeah, again, just showing the sheer magnitude of power between these two powerhouses. But as he stands on top of rubble, he is center framed, punches through the building, uh, and we see him from afar. If you notice, he's very far away in the frame, as if we're watching from a distance. Again, definitely a telephoto lens because this building and this building is not as close as it seems it is to Conquest. The only metric that is not as close is because there aren't these uh, vivid black lines around these structures, emulating fog and just natural distance and atmosphere. But it still appears pretty close and compressed due to telephoto lenses. Anything above 50 millimeter begins to compress no matter how you frame it. And we're kind of, telephoto gives that feeling that you're looking from afar. So we get that feeling that we saw this building fall and we were looking at the rubble from afar, and then we see Conquest break out of it from afar, which is a scary sight because we know he's coming back. Stands atop the rubble. And they've gone back to our signature Conquest shot. He is again just triumphed over Mark. Again, Mark is just hitting a brick wall back to back and over again. And we go back to this low angle Dutch tilt shot of Conquest just looking down on Mark as he is just a twisted guy. We're just uneasy again.
Yes, this. I want more.
And that was nice. Mark was being held up. We have two complimentary shots again. Right grid of thirds where Mark was. Conquest was on the left grid of thirds. But as he is lifted up by his throat because he's being choked, he begins to have a higher perspective of Conquest. So when he makes his move, even in that complimentary shot, Mark was higher. They kept Conquest at a eye level shot instead of making it a high angle because Conquest has the power despite Mark being higher. But with Mark being higher, this is an opportunity to use kind of the motivated blocking to use a high angle when he does get the upper hand. So Mark gets the upper hand and he's already looking down on Conquest. And we see him use this move where he slaps Conquest's ears. We learn Viltrumites have very sensitive hearing. So when he does this move, it affects him. And we now have Mark at a high angle, showing that he has that power.
Very good. That was just a warm up.
Again, we stay with these controlled movements, following the action very controlled, like Mark is just moving through the space. Conquest is getting knocked around. We have this again, they really like the Dutch kind of or a diagonal composition with our main antagonist, Conquest. I love how they use the space. They really utilize these extreme wide shots very well. Mark was seen flying through the space and doing this kind of loop around 360, gaining momentum to land an even faster blow. And it works out so well because they utilize the entire space. They can fly. They're very fast. So what better way to show that than backing the camera up all the way, capturing this very large source, and just seeing them move through the source as if they're just walking down the street. How I would run to my mailbox across the street is how fast they're moving across this area that's probably at least thousands of miles wide. But it also feels very controlled. It doesn't feel very frantic. It doesn't feel like each blow that they land is supposed to be the finishing blow, like uh like the main protagonist when he gets the power of friendship and lays out an ultimate move. It doesn't necessarily feel like that. It feels like they're just two very powerful creatures just going at it. Again, extreme wide shot. Now we put them both center framed. They're having a standoff moment. Invincible knocks him into the air. He follows him and then he stops to stare because Conquest stops in the air again. It's just looking at him, and they have a decent amount of distance between them. Notice how there's no foreground elements of shoulders or anything. This really what we're really signifying here is just the standoff between these two powerhouses. They've been going at it for a while now. Conquest has gotten the best of Mark at least a couple times now, and now Mark is he's not giving up though. He is going back in there. He's going at it, and they're both still two very powerful creatures, and we're acknowledging that, and we're acknowledging how they feel about what's just been happening. So we put Mark center framed, and we put Conquest center frame, and when we cut between it, we just get their pure raw expressions, because it's already implied that they're looking at each other and they're sizing each other up. Mark is clearly very frustrated, and Conquest is smiling and having a good time. So seeing those two dynamics is very interesting, and center framing them again directly clashes the two of those. Um, they slowly kind of shift them. They're still really center frame, but they shift him over slightly, and they shift Conquest over slightly. Again, just abiding by that 180 rule. What's very fascinating is, yeah, Mark is very confused, but he's kind of at a medium close up, while Conquest was a medium. He's kind of at a mid shot, while Conquest was at a medium close up. His line was cut off here, and he was framed here to the top of his head. Mark is framed a bit wider because he's just kind of watching. He's just confused. But when we cut the Conquest, and again, when these shots are tighter, that means what they're doing is very important. Conquest is seen blowing like the blood from Mark when he pushed him, and they're in space, so blood is hardening, and he squeezes it into a heart. So then they cut in even tighter on the heart. Um, so Conquest is really loving this war, this bloodlust. It's just painting him as even more of a psycho. It's painting him as even more of a psychopath. And then he breaks the heart. Now we have nice gritter third framing as he was in the right gritter thirds, and the heart shifts over into the left gritter thirds into this nice space. And since there's a space background, that red was very prominent, and yeah, look pretty good. Again, with the smooth movements, I love the consistency with that. There was a pan as Conquest ran into Invincible, and then we just kind of have a slow dolly back as they're coming towards the camera. So it's nice how the camera, everything isn't even caught in the camera to still show that they're, powerful. They're going through the camera, they're going around the camera. The camera has to kind of pan to keep up, but it's still controlled. It's nothing too crazy. And this is the most shake that we've had when they're both clashing, except for that first punch. That first punch had a lot of shake, and then it had a dolly. And then, I mean, there was some jittering, but I don't know. In my opinion, at least, I'm seeing a lot of shake in this really close shot, and like the framing isn't even as nice. We've got this movement of we can't even see Mark's face is getting cut out, but we can see Conquest, and the arms are kind of getting in the way. This is really signifying the scuffle. So they're getting into the portion where it's no longer like these kind of exchanging calculated blows or really winding up momentum like he did to punch him into space. Conquest is loving this fight. Mark is very frustrated. These two people are clashing. The fight is just drawing on longer, and there's tension being built. And now they're at the period where they're scuffling. These two powerhouses were just keep going at it and bumping heads, and now they're scuffling. Yeah, I love the camera movement choice to add a bit of shake and to not perfectly uh, not have perfect composition when it comes to the framing. Yep, there's a lot of shaking as they're really struggling to get the best of one another.
Still sure this is gonna go?
And what's very beautiful is since Mark actually got the upper hand on that case, Conquest is a little bit lower, framed on the bottom right grid of thirds. And the grid of thirds again is if you were to draw imaginary lines, a line right here, a line right here, a line across right here, and a line across right here, which will give you 9 imaginary boxes. One box right here, 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 3 boxes across, and 3 rows. And at the lines where the lines intersect are these mini crosses right there, 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 and there. And if you were to put something on these mini intersections, it just makes your image look a bit more aesthetically pleasing. And then there's a whole bunch of rules that go with rule of thirds, which you can dive a bit more deeper in, or I can make a video on explaining that a bit deeper. But Mark is on the top left grid of thirds, while Conquest is on the bottom right grid of thirds, because at this point in time, we as the audience, and even Mark believes that he has the upper hand at this point. So he is quite literally higher in the frame and looking down on Conquest, and he has this power dynamic going on. And if you can hear Mark and what he's saying too, he can say that, do you still think this is going your way? Because Conquest is very cocky this entire fight, and it gave us an uneasy feeling because of how serious Mark was taking it. But he's having the time of his life and saying things like, I want you to resist, I want to fight, I want this, and giving little blood hearts when he gets punched in the face. It's just very strange. But now Mark has the upper hand, we believe, so he is looking down.
Your way? Damn near certain.
And things have just changed. Very powerful again. Mark at an extreme wide shot asks, do you think this is going your way, while looking down at him? Although that wasn't the most important part of the dialogue. We thought it was, but it wasn't. As we get this very close-up shot of Conquest's face. Again, not the same as close with the face, but it's still very close, as it's not even just a shot of his entire face. We've cut off the bottom of his chin, and the top of his head to get in so tight. And we're center framed. Even though the shots before where Conquest were kind of on the right, Invincible was kind of on the left, we keep this 180 degree going on. Or when they were in space, they were center framed, but it wasn't this tight. But then they shift over to their respective sides. Conquest is dead center at this point, saying, damn certain.
Damn near certain.
And then we get this shot again where it was very wide. They start off wide, and they show how he just moves across the space so fast. And he moves across the space. And if you notice, this is the first pan or so, or I guess I can't say the first pan, but this is a pan that they use.
Go your way? Damn near certain.
Where the camera couldn't even keep up. No, I will say this is the first pan, or first tilt, since we went up. This is the first tilt where the movement couldn't keep up with the action. If you really notice, the action occurred and finished before the tilt. Like, he left the frame when the tilt started, practically. In all of our other shots that were controlled, even if they were to move past the camera was panning or tilting, and then they would go past the camera. This movement, he does his entire action practically most of the action before the camera can even get that movement. Like the camera was still moving afterwards to try to keep up with Conquest, showing that he's kind of he's ascending. He's kind of breaking out of this power scaling that they've set. Uh, they've been very consistent and how they've been framing and how they've been moving. And Conquest all of a sudden is starting to break free and it's starting to be seen a bit less. The camera all of a sudden can't keep up as fast. And that's to show that the camera is at Mark's level right now. Conquest is now ascending even further beyond that. And these little nuances are how they're showing just the difference in power scaling, which is very beautiful. I think it's very beautiful and very amazing. And then we have Mark on the left grid and Conquest on the right grid, but they're not even on the grid exactly. They're both wider and further out. Again, I think this is to show just how much space he covers and how fast he covers it. And yeah, that punch happens and then they have slow motion. And this is the first slow motion shot to really show the blood coming off of his face, the uh, mask being broken, the hair flowing in the wind. Oh man. Oh man. Yeah, that was bad. That was bad.
Mark, that's not too far away. I can help. Oliver. Keep moving and keep
Again, those are some more over the shoulder shots.
over there.
Shots of
Understand?
Oliver. These are more basic.
You made it.
Oh, and I think that's okay. So that's all they cover in this portion. If you all would want me to cover the other portion of the fight, I can. But yeah, so yeah, that's the I guess part one or beginning of the Invincible versus Conquest fight, the cinematic breakdown and kind of how they power scale with the camera. Even though these creatures, these creatures, Viltrumites are so strong, they accurately show how strong it is, but they actually show how they're kind of on similar levels. They use the camera movements to signify when things are shifting, things are changing, things are uncomfortable, and what is important and what's not important. And then they also use the camera movements to show when Conquest is showing his true power and ascending the level that Mark is at. All of this is being articulated visually very well. But yep, that's it. See.